Well, the first question out of my mouth, Steve, is just broad strokes. Your assessment of the situation over there in Ukraine.
Well, Ukrainian people have demonstrated incredible bravery in the face of overwhelming military superiority. And in many ways, the response of those 13 soldiers on Snake Island, just incredible, when they're threatened with their very lives by the Russian military ship, and their response, of course, was an expletive. It reminded me a lot of during the Battle of the Bulge, the famous General McCall. Yeah, nuts was his response when he was surrounded and going to be overwhelmed by, superior tanks and during the Battle of the Bulge. Now, he was, and I've done some research on him. He was one of the few generals, unlike Patton and some others, who he was very religious and wouldn't cuss, basically, and that's what nuts was. And the Germans didn't understand what nuts meant, and it was interpreted by he meant go to hell, basically, is what he was telling them. And they held out, and fortunately, they did get reinforcements about 4 days after that, sure. and it saved it. But it's and I have to salute President Zelensky as well.
Amazing
people. And it's incredible, the bravery that he's showing also, unlike, President Ghani in Afghanistan not that long ago, who fled the country almost immediately. And speaking of Afghanistan, that really sent out a signal, that debacle of a pullout there, a signal of weakness to the world's worst actors, that this administration was weak and could be taken advantage of, and that's what we're seeing with Putin in Ukraine. That unfortunately may very well be what we see with President Xi in China relative to Taiwan, and the mullahs in Iran moving forward on their nuclear program. We need what Ronald Reagan projected, and that was peace through strength.
Absolutely.
This administration is projecting just opposite. It's
Yeah, and you're right. I was saying before, Steve, we're fresh out of Ronald Reagan's in this country, and that's a shame because I feel that he, more than anyone else, just more than anything else, even Gorbachev, was responsible for the end of the Soviet Union. But again, alas, we don't have any Ronald Reagans out there. Let me ask you this, Steve. What can Congress do, if anything, about what's going on over there in Ukraine? Because you correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like Congress people are addressing this somewhat in a bipartisan manner. Am I right about that?
You are, and for the most part it is now. Unfortunately, we had strongly urged the administration to put into effect crippling sanctions, preemptive sanctions. In other words, before Putin actually acted, because his behavior was already reprehensible, bringing that many troops on the border, it was clear he was going to attack, and basically putting sanctions into effect now is the horse has already left the barn. And so the actions right now, and when Biden talked about, we'll see what happens, we'll look at these sanctions, how they're working 30 days from now.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, Kyiv is under attack right now, and hopefully they'll hold out. Again, the bravery of the people is just absolutely incredible, the sacrifices they're making. But crippling sanctions, and I'm not talking about half measures like we saw initially from Biden. It should have been essentially destroying the Russian ruble, their energy sector, their very economy. That's what we should have done initially. At this point, it's almost too late, Mike.
Yeah, you know what? And I don't know if you saw, Steve, I've got Fox News on with the sound turned down. Biden did authorize $350 million to help the Ukrainian military. I guess he did that this morning. I mean, $350 million is a lot of money, but a drop in the bucket, wouldn't you say?
Well, it certainly is when you consider what they're up against. And also it's going to take considerable time to get the materials there. Yes, we should try to resupply them. They need more javelins to try to destroy Russian tanks. They need ammunition. They need stingers to go after the Russian helicopters and planes and that sort of thing. But their own resources right now are so minimal compared to the Russians. And then getting resupplies in there is going to be tough, too. And the other challenge, of course, we have is the fact that we've essentially let NATO, not they've been free riders to the United States for years now.
Yeah.
President Trump, he got all kinds of criticism from the press for, allegedly trying to hurt NATO, and then he was actually trying to strengthen them. The important thing is they all said that they agreed at least 2% of their GDP would be devoted to their own defense and military, and many of them, the vast majority, are way under that. The United States, of course, is way above that. But we need to have our NATO allies working with us. It can't be just the United States. And of course, probably the stupidest thing of all was the very initial thing was crippling our own energy resources here in this country by shutting off the Keystone pipeline and then allowing the Nord Stream 2 to go ahead from Russia into Western Europe, especially Germany, so they're dependent. So that's why Putin is kind of in the driver's seat right now, and why many of the Europeans are afraid to act, because heating their homes and driving their cars is dependent on Russia now. And it's so unnecessary. The United States has far more energy resources than the Russians do, but we're now importing from them. And then Biden goes to Russia and tries to get them, this was some months back, to get them to increase their, again, fossil fuels, which are allegedly going to destroy the environment. Well, that affects us if they're doing it over there, too. We all breathe in the same environment. So this whole twisted thinking right now and the environmental radicalism is just nuts.
It's costing
really
lives.
It's making us weak.
It's costing lives at this point. Let me ask you, this is one of the questions I want to ask you. Keystone Pipeline, I believe it was the first day in office, probably the first hour, by Biden's pen, his executive order, he stopped work on it. Is there anything that Congress can do about that? And in general, Steve, do you think, and probably by both parties, that executive orders have really been misused and have usurped the proper role of Congress?
Well, right now, the majority in Congress, the House and the Senate, of course, are controlled by the Democrats. And they agree with Biden on these radical leftist policies, which have shut down the Keystone Pipeline. So, yes, Congress could reverse this if we had majorities that could overcome his veto. But, we don't even have majorities, much less two-thirds majorities, because Biden would veto it. Although maybe this has knocked some sense into him.
That's what I thought.
Hopefully, one would think you could learn, but does he have the mental, abilities and, his age to actually realize that he was wrong on these things and has put the United States in such a disadvantaged position, relative to Russia and other energy countries across the globe. So, yes, it could happen, but not with our current management in Washington.
I got you. I've been saying all morning, Steve Chabot, that I think that and it's not going to happen, it's a pipe dream, if Joe Biden woke up Monday morning, called a press conference and said, hey, when I came in here, I didn't want the Keystone Pipeline. I didn't want messing around in Anwar. I'm an environmentalist, and I still hold true to that. However, we're engaged in a global problem here, and I'm just going to have to rescind what I did on that, and we're going to open these things up. I think Joe Biden, Steve Chabot, probably easily would add 10 or 15 points to his favorables, and he would be seen as a hero. Am I off base on that?
No, I think you're right. Although, of course, many, I would assume the AOCs of the world and the radical leftists that have been, driving the agenda since he took office. I mean, he ran as a moderate, but then he has governed, on the left, way to the left, and that's why he's in such trouble right now. But should he reverse those kinds of things? Yeah, I think the public would appreciate that. The problem is, even to get the Keystone up now, there were thousands of jobs that he already killed, and you'd have to go back. It's like the wall on our southern border, where he's basically allowed illegals to flow in huge numbers every month. It was the highest number till the next month when it's even higher. So we've got all that, that equipment that we already paid for, the steel to build the wall. It's all down there rusting right now, and it would take some time, to get it going again. True. So if he came out Monday and did this, yes, it might send a good signal. unfortunately, the Russians are attacking right now, so it's probably not going to do a heck of a lot to help those poor folks there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me ask you this, Steve Chabot. I know we're pretty close in age. I think you might have a year or two on me, but you're a baby boomer, came from the same place, West Side Catholic. Did you ever think, given what happened with Nixon and the opening to China, and them at least initially showing some capitalist bent and perhaps even someday democracy, and then with the end of the Soviet Union, thank you, Ronald Reagan, the threat was gone. But did you ever think that at this age, for you and I, we're back to square one? Our enemies in the world are Red China, not the Soviet Union, obviously, but Russia. Did you think that would ever happen? Because I got to tell you, I didn't.
Well, I think we were all far too optimistic.
We were.
We thought that, bringing the PRC, the People's Republic of China, into the world's economy and WTO and all the rest, we thought that their exposure to us and the right way of doing things, that they would adopt those things. In essence, they did just the opposite. They ripped us off. They stole our intellectual properties. Our jobs ended up going over there, and they've now cornered the market on lots of things that we need. And that gets into this trying to ram all these left-wing Green New Deal policies down our throat on let's shove everybody into electric cars, for example. Yep. The government trying to do that. Now, if people want electric cars and they're affordable and everything, hey, that's fine. But essentially, China has cornered the market on a lot of these rare earth minerals in places like Africa and Central America and South America. So we need this. It's cobalt and a whole lot of things. They've cornered the market. So now they're the ones that are advantaged when we drive electric cars. Same thing with solar panels and stuff. It's over there. For the most part, they're being built, and we've allowed that to happen. So we were far too optimistic. A lot of our government policies have just been plain stupid. The Green New Deal, AOCs, and those folks that are now the prevailing mindset, get rid of it. It's absolutely nuts. Yeah, we want to. I've got kids and grandkids. We want to breathe in clean air and drink in clean water. But these radical left-wing environments are just leaving us in the dust, and they're allowing, China, for example, to become the world's dominant power. They actually have a larger Navy than the U.S. Navy now. So things are changing, Mike, and not in a good way.
No, you're right about that. And they are, I think, our number one, I don't want to say enemy yet, but they probably are. I wanted to ask you this, Steve. You're one of the go-to guys in Congress on all things Taiwan related. Do you see anything that perhaps you're able to talk about that is becoming more eminent and we're getting closer to a Red Chinese attempted takeover of Taiwan?
I'm very concerned, Mike. Yeah, I'm the one of the co-chairs of the Congressional Taiwan Caucus and have been for a couple decades now. And we've been concerned for a long time. But again, relative to Afghanistan and other things that this administration, they projected weakness, and it's emboldened China and it's emboldened Russia. And I'm very concerned that they may move in the relatively near future. And then we really may very well be looking at a world war, because unlike, our commitment and NATO's commitment to Ukraine, which is somewhat marginal. They're not a member of NATO, so we're helping them, but no troops on the ground there.
True.
It's different with respect to Taiwan. We've essentially, and Biden came out to his credit and said that if the PRC acts there, we will be there. But so it could happen. We don't want them to do this, but the weaker we look, the more chance there is that we're going to end up in a shooting war. And one of our biggest rivals, if you want to say enemies, of course, is China. And President Xi, of course, he's in the process of making himself leader for life, unlike, previous folks. And I think taking Taiwan, and I don't want to say taking it back because it was actually never part of China. Taking over Taiwan, I think, is a legacy item for him. And they're critical. They are, the world's semiconductors that are instrumental in our car and everything else. They're the largest producer in the world of that. If China took that over, they've cornered the market on that. it's game over.
Yeah, we're in bad shape if that happens. And you're right. I think the threat of a world war goes up substantially. Hopefully that's not going to happen, but I'm afraid, and I think I hear you saying too, that probably will eventually.